Don Gabinito. Apart from her hut in the hills, Doña Sylvia also had another house situated on sizable grounds by the road on the outskirts of a small town, almost completely concealed by many trees that grew around it. To the left of the house, a luxuriant tree provided excellent shade over several benches crudely built of logs and planks. At the back, a ramadan made of poles supported a climbing vine, which, in season, bloomed lavishly with beautiful flowers. On hot afternoons, we would sit and talk there while shelling corn or doing some other work. While I was ill, my daily tasks consisted of nursing my wounds and, as Doña Sylvia put it, cleansing away my sins. She explained that our principal responsibility towards the spirit was to heal ourselves. For us, this is the basic principle and the way that leads one to safety, happiness, and contentment. For that, one must first purify oneself. People are so used to being unwell that they don't even realize they are ill and only look after themselves in extreme cases. We, the healers, however, are different. We are dedicated to constant maintenance of our health because it is a sin to harm the body given us by God. The healing path demands that we stop sinning because no one can enter glory unless their physical body is in perfect working condition. I asked, why is that? Because as long as one's body is using its resources to heal, one hardly has enough energy to do other work. The price one pays for neglecting one's health is very high. Not only does one pay by disease and even death, no one can never manage to gather the energy necessary for salvation. While my wounds were healing, I walked using a cane as a makeshift crutch. I couldn't help noticing strange activities in the healer's house. At first, I could not distinguish very well the people who frequented it. But after a while, I became able to tell the residents from those who came for consultation or as occasional visitors. Among the patients, the residents, and the frequent visitors, I made friends with a strange old man who told me he was suffering from gastric ulcer. Because of alcohol abuse and other shit, as he put it. It turned out that the old man, called Don Gabinito, was like a house dog. Everyone treated him badly, and seemed to want to chase him out. For some reason, however, I enjoyed his company, although I pitied him. Doña Sylvia even told me once not to give him too much rope, because otherwise they'd never manage to get rid of him. "Why do you want to get rid of him?" I asked. Bino simply couldn't be more annoying. But as he's homeless, he's moved in with us. He came here ill with malaria, delirious all the time, and close to dying. We cured him, but as he had nowhere to go once we'd finished with him, he stayed on and ended up living here with us. Just imagine, one day, pretending to be crazy, he wanted to have his way with me. Fat chance. I whacked him right across his mug. He went off with his noddle ringing and regained his sanity double quick. "I can't believe Don Gabinito did that," I said. "He seemed so fragile and delicate with everyone, and totally submissive." I honestly felt that way. Never be fooled by appearances, and be aware, because wolves are sometimes disguised as sheep. Doña Sylvia laughed to tears at her own words. I thought she was quoting one of her biblical sayings, or something similar to illustrate the old man's indecent behavior, and that in this case, her quote meant that you always had to be on your guard against evil. Don Gabinito was always busy with something, actively tending to the sick or helping them settle in. As they waited for their turn, he would serve them water or lemonade. He would attend to everyone with courtesy and grace. Yet, as soon as he spoke, no one could have the slightest doubt that he was raving mad. On many occasions, he would even become violent, so we all preferred him to stay quiet. Once he had calmed down, however, Don Gabinito would display such clarity of thought that my esteem for him grew steadily. We mainly discussed science, culture, and religion. The man was erudite, but for some reason or for no reason whatsoever, all of a sudden he would lose his composure and begin babbling incoherently. Don Gabinito kept a tilted board in the open area at the back of the house. One day I asked him what it was for, and he invited me to meet him there later that night. The darkness was so impenetrable that I had to grope around. With arms extended in front of me, I made my way as carefully as possible up to the area of our meeting. When I got there, I couldn't see anyone. I felt the first pangs of fear. But at that moment, Don Gabinito arrived with a kerosene lamp, as amiable as ever, and pointing a finger at the myriads of brilliant tiny lights in the sky, I asked in his lively manner, "Have you looked at the stars carefully?" I had always loved the night sky, so I told him that, yes, I had, and that I was enchanted by them. He then explained to me the workings of the device, adjustable both in angle and in direction, with 360-degree mobility. I wanted to know what his tilted bench was for. He invited me to try out his observatory, as he called it, by lying down on it for a moment. I reclined on the wooden board and found the position extremely comfortable. The direction he had selected provided me with a splendid view of a large milk-white patch sprawling in the sky. That night, we talked until the small hours, and Don Gabinito demonstrated vast knowledge of stellar cartography. I became accustomed to meeting with Don Gabinito at night. He taught me to identify stars I had never heard before. My visits became so frequent that he built an additional observatory for me, and the two of us passed many a night hour discussing stars and life. As I gazed, entranced, at the splendor of the night sky, Don Gabinito helped me distinguish the constellations, the groupings of stars forming the zodiac, which he knew by their popular names, their scientific names, and their names in the language of the ancients. We spent hours every night identifying the stars. With his help, I learned to isolate unusual groups of stars which, according to him, resembled one a death ray, another a vulture in flight, and so on. He would give names as exotic as possible to each group he wanted me to learn. In this manner, he gave me a masterly introduction to the knowledge of the ancients, explaining the characteristics of the stars in the form of anecdotes and tales of mythical personages, drawing on literature or the indigenous tradition, or maybe inventing them himself. One night, while discussing the constellation of Sagittarius, I asked Don Gabinito if he believed in horoscopes. "Those in the magazines?" he replied, with a horrified face. "Are you kidding? I'm crazy, but I'm not a dickhead. And yet, The healers over there believe in them, he added, pointing at the house. They believe in horoscopes in the magazines? That lot believe in any drivel they are told, he replied, suppressing a chuckle, and then added, correcting himself, all right, they don't read the magazines, but they do believe that stars affect people. That knowledge comes from their ancestors. Do you know what that knowledge is about? I asked. Only what I've heard them discuss. He added that doubtlessly certain stars did exert some kind of influence on our planet. For example, the moon affects all living beings, including humans. The authorities everywhere know that more crimes and accidents take place at the time of the full moon. The tendency of pregnant women to give birth during the waxing phases of the moon is also considered a mystery. According to Don Gabinito's teaching, understanding our relationship with the universe and how the cosmic influences affect us was vital for achieving harmony with our environment and our peers. There is a law of attraction and repulsion in the cosmos. Energy flows from one side to the other following regular patterns, and it is very important to understand how that swaying of energy affects us. I asked him how I could set about becoming aware of how it affected me, and he told me that healers advise their apprentices to make a corroboration list. I didn't understand what he meant, so he gave me an example. You should keep a record of your emotional states and then compare it against the phases of the moon. The list could also include the notes of your energy level, physical disposition, mental clarity, periods of greater irritability, and so on. Every night, after everyone else had retired, I enjoyed getting together with Don Gabinito to gaze at the sky and talk. Sometimes I felt sure he wouldn't come because he'd reached the peak of madness in the course of the day. But then he would turn up as if nothing had happened. When I was with him, time passed so fast that sometimes I only became aware that the night was over as the day began to break. With the intention of helping him, I tried to question him on a number of occasions about his radical changes of character. He began calmly trying to explain, but then lost control. So I decided not to bother him anymore with it. However, piecing the fragments of what he told me together with what I heard from the others, I managed to form an idea of what seemed to have happened to him. He told stories of beings from other planets and talked as if he had been abducted by aliens. What hurt me most was that no one believed him and even laughed in his face when he told them of his adventures. "How do you think I got malaria, huh? He asked me in his typical whiny, urgent manner. "Well, it was those damned rascals. They took me and then left me in the middle of the Amazon jungle. I had to tramps through it for months, eating roots and forest fruit and facing all kinds of danger, of which I managed to survive, all but the mosquitoes. Oh, those frigging mosquitoes. They were something else. When I finally encountered the first signs of civilization, I was already very sick, and I can guarantee you, I was very far away from Mexico then. I had to walk far to get back here. I used to be fine in the head until those wrenches did something to me. It took me years to remember who I was, and I still come off the rails from time to time," said Don Gabinito, referring to his constant attacks of madness. Then he became agitated again and spoke incongruously with the expression of a frightened psychopath. The stories of his abduction were famous among the residents and the visitors who openly made fun of his yarns. Then he would end up becoming raving mad and start drooling on his shirt, speaking incoherently, and even attacking people. On one occasion, a dog spirit entered him. He bit one of the assistants, then went to the back of the house and barked wildly for hours. One night of the new moon, I had the shock of my life. I was just about to go to bed when I heard Don Gabinito howl somewhere not far away, and, filled with curiosity, went to see what he was up to. I could see his silhouette in the distance by starlight alone. When I got closer, however, I saw it was the outline of a huge wolf. I spun around and leaped as I had never done before in my entire life, feeling stabs of vestigial pain in my healing wounds. I ran like crazy and reached the door of the house in seconds, my heart pounding. Concerned, Doña Sylvia asked me what had happened. I didn't want to admit that I had been spying on Don Gabinito and said, "I've been running, that's all." She laughed and said I was white as wax, as if I'd seen a ghost or worse. Still laughing, she added that she'd seen me prowling around the Bino. I admitted her seeing had been accurate, and described the weird thing I had perceived. She said, I'd bumped into the Nagual. I thought again that she had used the word Nagual erroneously. I longed to corroborate the description of Nagualism Castaneda had given in his books more than anything. So I closed myself to any other description, rejecting anything that did not fit its specifications. Fanaticism is a disease of the mind, where the patient strives to carry on in the same direction. Self-importance, and even more, the shame of admitting one's mistakes often compel one to act like an automaton that only sees what it is programmed to see. One of the noblest concepts modern science shares with Nagualism is that both are able to admit to their mistakes and learn from them. The excitement of discovering the truth being as great as discovering its opposite. There is a whole collection of anecdotes about incidents involving Don Gabinito. On one occasion, for example, a very unfriendly white nanny goat got away. Don Gabinito went to his den and pulled out a billy goat hide, complete with a stuffed head fashioned with a beautiful pair of horns and glass eyes that gave it a macabre appearance. He put on his billy goat disguise and charged into the bushes, bellowing. Unsurprisingly, in a little while, he returned with the goat meekly following him without the aid of a rope. Don Gabinito was out once with one of the patients looking for herbs in the nearby hills. It so happened that during the excursion, the girl got bitten by a rattlesnake. The crazy old man took care of her for several days among the hills, until he had cured her not only of the snake bite, but also of the disease she had originally been suffering from. I learned later that snake bite was the very medicine the patient needed for her condition. In fact, that was the reason Don Gabinito took her to the hills. He told us that he had already spoken to the snake and asked it to help him. The snake had agreed, so he took the sick girl there. He told us he had said to the snake, "Lady Cotel, please help me cure a sick girl who needs a drop of your venom. But it must be a very small amount, because if you inject too much, she will die." The snake replied, "Don't worry, old man. I know what I'm doing." And so, at the right moment, the snake injected enough of its venom to cure, but not kill the girl. Speaking of the healers, Don Gabinito said jokingly with a look of exaggerated disapproval. And do our dear friends here recognize my achievement? No, sir, they don't. They say everything was pure coincidence, and that the girl was cured by potions they gave her. I can heal no worse than they, but no one takes me seriously. On another occasion, as part of our training, we were all going to climb a very steep mountain. In his piping tone, Don Gabinito managed to convince one of our companions that he badly wanted to go with us, but was very ill and could not walk. Would he be kind enough to carry him? The young man agreed, and Don Gabinito climbed onto his back. The poor boy carried him all the way up, stumbling, puffing, and sweating like a pig on a spit. When we finally got to the top, Don Gabinito jumped off the youth's back with the agility of an acrobat and vanished among the rocks and the shrubbery. We searched for him for a while, but it was beginning to get dark, and we needed to put up an emergency shelter right there on the hilltop. It was a crazy night. We were harassed by the Allies. All of us heard the flapping of wings and the screeching of what seemed to be a huge bird over our heads, but couldn't see nothing. Then we were attacked by a horde of invisible monkeys that made us forget our fear of the flying creature. We were so scared that we ran out of there in full darkness and only stopped when we had reached the plains below.